Somebody at home will be watching this one and saying, boys, we have quite the fight coming tonight. Sijara Eubanks moving back down to flyweight. Yikes. And she's going to be taking on Elise Reed. Elise Reed, I have a great stat line for her because she's had an absolutely incredible life so far coming into the cage. This one from MMAprospects.com. She was the Cage Fury Fighting Championship strawweight champion, a U.S. Army reservist, an Iraq war veteran, a Virginia Military Institute highest-ranking female graduate, third-degree Taekwondo black belt, and the owner of chief instructor of Kickside MMA. That's absolutely insane. I've gone back through and watched a lot of different interviews from Elise Reed, and there's a lot of them out there this week. But one with JHK that he did with Sportskeeda. Now, he does great work for us, and he does great work for them as well. But she has a wild military background. She teaches a lot of different courses out there, too. She mainly served in Kuwait, but also a little bit in Iraq. And if you look at the way that she fights, she does fight in a very karate-style stance. She throws a lot of front kicks up the middle, mixes in her kicks with her punches. She has decent takedown defense. I wouldn't say it's great, but she has decent takedown defense against a lot of those upper body throws that we see in some of women's MMA, and good enough defensive grappling from what we've seen so far. She's been able to reverse a lot of positions. For Elise Reed, I remember watching her first fight on the Bellator prelims way back when at Bellator 231, and I was a lot less excited for Elise Reed than I was to see Rebecca Brigman fight. And if you're a Rebecca Brigman fan, she's got a big fight coming up with the fight organization that we cover live and in person, NEF, at NEF 44. She's going to be taking on Bangor's own Glory Watson. Can't wait for the fight. Watson's a hell of a fighter. You look up her amateur record, it's wild. I think I've been there for every fight. She's 0-1 pro. All that to say, Rebecca Brigman, also known as Orion Star, Google it. Just Google it. But for Elise Reed, she picked up a TKO win there. She won by decision against Jasmine Jaws the Vicious. She beat Jillian DeCourcy that you see on Twitter every single week. And then she beat Hillary Rose at CFFC 97 just a couple of months ago. So for Elise Reed, huge call-up. Sijara Eubanks was supposed to take on Priscilla Cachoeira at 135 pounds, who just came off a huge win in her own right. That was going to be an interesting fight for Eubanks, whose record isn't sexy whatsoever. The UFC is going to say 7-6. We're going to say 6-6. But the last time she fought at 125, she weighed 127.2 against Roxanne Modafferi back in 2018. So it's going to be a return. She's 36. What are you saying?
I don't think this fight's going to be competitive at all. I got to get that out of the way right now. And my opinion of Sijara Eubanks is probably 15% lower than what the average is. But this is the problem. Elise Reed's style, and I'm going to push back on one thing you said. Her defensive grappling isn't great. She does get into a lot of bad positions. Now, she has been able to work herself out of those positions against some levels of competition. But you shouldn't be getting put into inverted triangles and then sweep from the top position. That's the problem. When I've seen you in positions like that with much lower level competition and much worse grapplers than what Sijara Eubanks is going to be bringing into the UFC, it's just a really hard ask. And I know we say this a lot. When you're on short notice, when you get brought into short notice, yes, you can have like the Terrence McKinney type wins, but unless you have knockout power like that, it's going to be really, really hard to go out and have a full gas tank that someone normally would when they have a full training camp. So the fact that Elise Reed's taking this fight on short notice against a much, much larger fighter, and this is the thing about Sijara Eubanks, I don't know what her weight cut's going to be. It could be good, it could be bad. I'm not going to know the answer to that question until question mark kicks. But for right now, what I can tell you is that Sijara Eubanks hits way harder than Elise Reed. She doesn't have great stand-up, and she does actually leave herself open quite a bit, but she is a fighter who throws everything in her shots. If you go back to the Aspen Ladd fight, and I'll be very honest, I probably put too much stock in that fight than I should, but if you could... My whole theory is that if you're that fighter one night, then you could be that fighter again another fight. And she looked really good in that fight. I understand Aspen Ladd walked away with the win, but the fact that Sijara Eubanks was able to have a fight of the night with Aspen Ladd, who at the time was considered like the contender in the division, of course, till Jermaine Durandamy beat her, I don't see this being that competitive. I really do think Elise Reed's going to have a very hard time with the physical strength of Sijara Eubanks, and the fact that Reed throws so many kicks is actually going to be a detriment to her. The fact that she throws kicks is actually going to take away from her own mobility, and if you're throwing a lot of kicks, you can't really move when you're throwing kicks. And the problem, well, you can't. When one foot's in the air, the other's going to be on the ground. And with someone like Sijara Eubanks, who can just do that really nasty grind style of wrestling where I'm going to hold you against the cage, I'm going to sap you of your strength, and I'm going to try to take you down, I think it's a really hard ask for Elise Reed. If she did have like real knockout power, one punch, one kick power, then I might believe in her. I'm just having a really hard time seeing the areas of the fight that she'll have success in.
It is really tricky, and that's an agreement because, yeah, when you're throwing kicks like that and you have to play slant, that's Eubanks' time to just drive right in. Now, can she get caught? I wouldn't say she's going to get caught with a front kick on the way in, but maybe this is a Machida in Elise Reed, the Taekwondo master. Maybe it's an Anthony Pettis. I get that's might be the better comp. But in this one, both women training out of the same area of the world. You have Eubanks coming out of Nick Cantone MMA, Mark Henry in the corner. When I looked at the odds for this one, maybe not much of a surprise. Eubanks open to -225. She's now a -277 favorite over on Best Fight odds. For Elise Reed, open to +190. She's +219 now. Over on Tapologies, a surprise to us as it is to you. Hey, it's pretty close. 556 total votes, 59% Eubanks, 87% by decision. For the 41% that I've read, 81% by decision. Maybe you like the over on this one. For me, I like Eubanks, and again, it might be a little bit of recency bias. It might be the fact that they had her booked against Carol Hossa and then Priscilla Cachoeira. Listen, Cachoeira in her last one against Gina Mazzani, all she had to do, outlast the early storm, pick up a huge TKO win. That's probably what she wanted to do against Eubanks. For Elise Reed, though, just fought 2 months ago. She's going to be fresh. She's moving up a weight class, so the energy systems will be there. But it's a really tough ask against Sijara Eubanks, and I get it. Not all 500 fighters are created equal. Somewhere on that scale is like a Randa Marcos. And somewhere on that scale is Artem Lobov, who still has that clause in every single contract that he could fight Zubair Tukhugov at a moment's notice at the drop of a hat. But for Sijara Eubanks, I go through and I look at the losses. Kianzad got tired. Ketlin Vieira was another loss. Betch Kohea, Aspenlad, Chukagian. Big names. The wins, Avila, Morris, Modafferi, Lauren Murphy. Realistically, if she made weight, she probably would have beat Nico Montano, and we could be talking about the flyweight champ, but the weight was always an issue for Sijara Eubanks.
That's the thing with Sijara Eubanks. I know Jessica I was a fighter who fought the majority of her career at 135, and then after the UFC did open the women's flyweight division, she then did make the weight cut down. But for Eubanks, it was kind of the opposite. She couldn't make weight. She was forced to move up because they wouldn't put her in that main event against Valentina Shevchenko at Madison Square Garden. Remember, that was the whole weird thing. Derek Lewis ended up fighting Volkov on that card. It was just, or no, he fought Daniel Cormier in the main event of that card because it was all weird. But Sijara Eubanks at 125 really is a problem. Like, that is her weight class if she is able to make the weight. I understand that's a very big caveat, but people have kind of forgot how good she was down at 125. Against the bigger fighters at 135, her physical strength isn't really shining through as it does down a weight division, and I really do think that if she can make this weight comfortably, then this fight will not be much of a contest.
Elise Reed, she is an American hero, and that's not a joke coming from a Canadian, so credit to the service, but for me, I'm going with Sijara Eubanks. I think the physicality could be an issue, but I'm not throwing it on a card because that red flag of the weight. You're going to have to wait for question mark kicks. Hey, we'll see what happens later on in the week. You also have Eubanks here?
Yes, I do.
Both of us going with Nick Cantone, MMA Zone, Sijara Eubanks to get the win. You're not going to want to miss the rest of the videos. In the co-main event at 135, Macy Chasson's got a really tricky fight taking on Aspen Ladd. And in the main event, holy smokes, the return of the little snake in the grass. TJ Dillashaw is going to be taking on Corey Sandhagen. You're not going to want to miss this. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.